go, Whack.
Call to order.
That's nice.
I call the Redevelopment Commission meeting to order.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Shannon Walls.
Here.
Pete Murphy.
Here.
Dale Needleman.
Here.
Alex Jordan. Ruth Hess.
Here.
Larry Longman.
Here.
Greg Brewer.
Okay. Let's review in the approval of the minutes from April 1st.
I've reviewed them. I don't know if anybody else wants discussion, but if there's no discussion, I move that we approve the minutes as written.
A second.
I have incredible faith in you. Oh, I can remember where I'm filming.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes pass. The financial report of April 2025.
Just to note, we actually we got all the reports back on the other property and did some layouts and got really comfortable with it, and we're fine moving forward. So we actually closed on that property today. So that's not reflected in here, but that is the money from the council sitting right there. So that'll be reflected in your next RDC fiscal report. We took most of the other line items out of the seeded dollars. Still not comfortable with the balance in the other ones to use them as I would normally use them.
Mm-hmm.
So, but everything's fine. We're in a healthy spot, and we'll get our next draw at the end of June.
Okay. Anyone have any questions?
I see we got our rent payment.
We did. We need our May. I need to remind him of May. So, luckily he lives right here. So
Yeah. Just have Chad walk over there.
only one other thing on the fiscal reports. We got a invoice from Bondry today for the RDC April report that I just added right before the meeting. It is above my threshold of approval, so I need an RDC approval.
That's for the 10,000.
Yeah.
What are you?
Still loading.
That's it. It's not very fancy.
Okay. I move that we approve invoice number 00272 for $10,000 to Bondry.
Being new to this, can I ask a question? Is that typical?
We just had this debate. We charge $2,000 per area. We guys have 5 areas. Mr. Gropp is advocating on behalf and wants that lowered, and we will consider that for future reports.
I'm going to pull our invoices that clerk treasurer has them. I don't think I've ever paid near $10,000 before, and I have a little issue. Not saying our agreement doesn't state that, but we have one allocation area that has one parcel. We have another allocation area that's got 2 parcels, and I have a little issue paying $2,000 per allocation area for one that has a majority of the parcels and the others that are. You're not doing the same work for every allocation Right. area. Our allocation areas are pretty simple,
Mm-hmm.
minus the consolidated one. So it took me a little bit by surprise to see this number. It was definitely higher than I'm used to in the past ones, and we'll work through it for the future reports.
So you weren't expecting this?
I was not expecting, if I read it in the contract, but I did not read the contract that way. I read it, I missed the per allocation area aspect of it, but I also would argue that that's kind of ridiculous, especially for some of our allocation areas that are 1 or 2 parcels. That doesn't seem like good policy, so.
So should we hold on this for now?
No, it's per the agreement, but we will be discussing that for future reports. And frankly, if I got to pull those out and do those myself, I'll do them myself.
So basically, we're, it's per the contract, we're going to pay either way, right? So,
And we are
Yep.
gonna-
okay.
Yeah.
we'll-
We'll work.
This is
It was a surprise. This came late, and literally right before this
And
meeting.
we didn't expect it to be today, paid today
Yeah.
either. It was just.
Crappy emails were exchanged, and we'll work it out afterwards.
Gotcha, okay.
So sometimes that happens when you have a new consultant and you're getting used to.
And that is our
All
standard
the details.
invoicing to all clients, so this is not something that you're doing for.
Just for us.
But we will consider the arguments that 10 made about those 2 allocation areas and.
Gotcha, okay.
How long is the contract for? Does it,
1 year.
1 year.
so are you bound to it?
I mean, we could terminate it. we'll just have to get but you're gonna pay something, whether it's Crow or London Whitty or Bondry or.
I'm just trying to decide, do we approve this
So-
one for payment even though you weren't expecting it?
It was in the contract, I just
Then I
never
second,
contemplated some of these.
If
that
it's in the
were
contract, then yeah.
smaller.
then you owe the
Okay.
money. I have a second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Bondry invoice and financial report pass. For old business, we have reduced plans, review of stoplight drawings.
Yeah, so you had requested at the last meeting to take a look at the current plans. I'll do my best. I'm no engineer here, but I will give you first an update of where we're at. So it's taking a little frustration on my end with the process. Larry will understand what I'm saying. That it is not out to bid yet. It is ready to be out to bid, but we expected this to be built by in the summer when school was out, and it looks like it'll bleed into the beginning of August. So where we're at is the first thing that had to happen was Nine Star had to raise the power poles in front of Emerald Spring because they were too short, and so there was a conflict. So they actually have done that.
That got done last week,
That got
right?
done last week, and it was a little unfortunate that that storm blew all those over, and they replaced them with standard poles, and they had to replace those standard poles with higher poles. So
Oh, I didn't know that.
yeah, that was pretty weird timing. The second issue we have is we have to meet with the HOA because there's a street light here, and we actually need that light, but it's actually owned by the HOA. And the town needs to take that over now. I can't imagine the HOA complaining that we're taking over a streetlight for them. But we still have to do it, and we still have to have an agreement with them. So we're meeting with their HOA to discuss that and handle that issue. Final plans are we're basically in process here. Let me just see if I have a better drawing of the final project. So everything's ready to put out the door. I just need it to be put out the door for bid, so we can get it back and get an approval and then get into a construction schedule. Because anyone knows if you approve it next month, they're not doing it right away. They got to order supplies, they got to mobilize, they got to get in their schedule.
I suspect these polls are probably 12 weeks.
Let's hope not.
But they are.
So anyways, that's kind of where we're at. We're ready to put it out to bid. I've instructed our engineer to put it out to bid and get this process moving. So, site-wise, you can see we have a little bit of concrete work. We should not have to close. We'll have some lane restrictions, but we should not have to close the intersection. It really shouldn't be this is not a project that should be in big interference with school buses or anything. So it really is not a horribly difficult. This is the new design, so you can see we have enhanced crosswalks. We've added concrete so that you can get to the sidewalks better. So the one thing we heard was better pedestrian crossings, which we know we need on 600. So we spent that extra little bit of money to make sure we did the crossings nicer. We have better pedestrian controls and everything else. So this will be a much safer way to get across 600 than anything we have right now. So turn lanes added, so we have stacking for turn lanes, so we're not hindering traffic, north-south traffic. That's
So do you expect to have pricing back for us by next month?
that would be my
that the
hope,
plan?
is that we get this out and it's back by next month. And that'd be great.
Has there been a
Crack that
change
whip.
in, has there been a change in how the light at Leo's functions? Because it's gotten incredibly difficult to get out of our subdivision, much more than it was just a month ago.
Which one? Oh.
Coming out of the villages, the
No.
traffic coming from the north, it's like it's never ending. Does that light not change at all up there during the day? Does it stay
Oh,
green?
yeah, it does.
No, it changes.
It definitely
Does
changes.
It just feels like every time I'm there, it just feels like somebody's done something to the sinking of it, and it's just,
Yeah, but I haven't. That's the first I'd heard of that light having. We've had some discussions about the one at McCord Square because we
Right.
purposely kept it very short so
Yep.
that we're not hindering traffic. But we've changed nothing on the 900
Okay.
one.
Okay.
So I'll keep an eye on it. Sometimes a power outage or something will reset something, so we can go check the cabinet and see if everything's fine, but I hadn't heard any of that, other than there's just a lot of traffic
There's a
on
lot of
600.
Yeah, it's just, all of a
So-
sudden, it feels like it used to be tough to get out. Now it feels like it's impossible.
Well,
And it's only been in the
hopefully we'll
last
fix
month.
No, there is a problem with it, but it won't
yeah,
help
so
Pete's
you-
problem.
Might
It's,
go out.
southbound, 600 will not, so I should say northbound, 600 gets an automatic, flashing yellow for
Mhm.
turn,
Southbound does not.
but it doesn't trigger southbound traffic on 600. So there's something wrong with that sensor. I know Mark and Ron have had to deal with that several times.
I remember there was something with the sensor in the ground. We replaced it, and then we looked at
There's
other
still-
options.
there's still something not right.
900.
But that won't help Pete because that's holding
Yeah,
the
right.
traffic back. So maybe it's best to just leave it.
Since my Waze
Oh,
always
Ron,
tells me I'm
yeah.
approaching a railroad crossing, could we just put a railroad gate across 600? I'd be happy with that.
Well, this will solve your problem.
It will. We just need to get it out to bid
Need
and
to get it out to
procured,
bid
right?
so we can get it in the programming. So.
Wow.
Any questions? That's probably your best drawing.
I did have one question on the signage. Are you putting the lit signs on there?
I believe
It
so.
looked like there was a graphic showing the same type of sign that's at McCord Square.
Yeah, that Ryan really pushed to go to that, and I don't really like those, but everyone else does. So
I like
lose
it,
that battle.
but my fear is it's a long-term maintenance problem as soon
yeah.
as those bulbs
Yeah.
burn out.
Yeah, I concur, but public safety really likes it. So
It's probably a good thing to have to start, to let people see it and make sure they're aware of everything. And
is that in these plans? I didn't look. at
Yeah,
those.
it was on like the signage plan.
I don't
It's on sheet 6 of 7. Right there on the bottom, 600 West, North Emerald.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
Those will be the street sign details.
Mm-hmm. They're nice.
It looks like they're the. I'll ask if those are the lit, backlit cabinets or if those are just signs.
Because the more of those we get, the next procurement request that Ron will have is a cherry picker.
Well, that's been on the list. But the problem is we don't have anyone who's not scared of heights to run it. That's a real
It's a
problem.
robotic cherry picker.
Let me ask him the signs. I'll ask that. I don't know if those are standard signs or if those are cabinet signs. And I can't, it's too far away for me to hit the details there. This is overhead.
Yeah, it doesn't detail whether or not they're illuminated.
It probably does, and it's probably one of these details right here that I really would have to blow it up to see. Which I could do. All signal lighting. I'll look at it and let you know. I'm wasting too much time trying to read small print.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Nope. No, we don't have to make a motion or anything on this.
No, that was just, you had asked to see the plans, so we made sure the
All right.
plans were on there.
On to new business, patch development project agreement. Is there a final?
So we had approved the term sheet, and so this was kind of a, we didn't necessarily need to bring this back, but it's been a while, and we thought it's probably just safer, and now that the council has to be part of it for the road impact fee, we thought we're just gonna go ahead and put it on there and have it reviewed by both entities, the RDC and council, so I don't know if, do you wanna talk about it, or?
I'll talk a little. I like to go up to the.
Yeah, you
That's okay, yeah.
appreciate that.
Good evening, commission members. For the record, Dennis Otten with Bose McKinney and Evans. I was here last month, I think it was, on this project. And I'll mention we have Andrew and Sean from the patch development team, and Oscar from Bondry. We've all been working on this project with Tim and the rest of the team. So this resolution, Tim mentioned this before. This is kind of belt and suspenders, you all have approved a term sheet. I think you know the deal, but this is really, let's memorialize it. Let's get in front of you. And as Tim mentioned, it's going to go in front of the council next week, primarily because there's some road impact fee language in there. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't bring it in front of the council. But, just full transparency, full disclosure. So this agreement has been reviewed by the patch team's legal counsel. They've been very good to work with. Just minor changes, nothing big, just clarification kind of stuff. So the deal is the same that we've talked about before. You'll also see behind this approves a form of taxpayer agreement. And I'll just explain a little bit of what that is. In the project agreement, Patch has committed to a certain amount of investment. The town is going to issue bonds. We'll have debt service to pay on that. The expectation is that the tax increment revenues from the patch development will be sufficient to pay the town back for how much those bonds cost over a 25-year period. We're actually going to do the bond term at a lesser term of 20 years, so we don't trigger the clock on the TIF area, which is good for the town, but will be protected by Patch's obligation under the taxpayer agreement. That gets recorded against the property. It's first lien, priority like a tax lien. So pretty common in these instances. So, and I'll tell you, the taxpayer agreement, these have gotten pretty formulaic and generic, so not a lot to them. The only comment I had from Patch's legal counsel, frankly, was that if Patch decides that they want to sell off a portion of the project, then the portion of their payment obligation can be allocated to whoever's taking over the property. And we'll just do an addendum to the agreement. So very common in these industrial parks to have something like that. So no real surprises, but happy to answer any questions you all might have. I want to make sure you all are comfortable and understand everything.
What is the clause for the road impact fees? Why does it have a 2-year burn on it there?
Tim, I'm looking at you, Tim, because I know
Yeah.
I think this was more at the town request.
I think they're waived within the first 2 years.
So there were, if you remember the map, it was basically only the back 4 parcels. We already have submittals on one of those, and so they're going to beat the clock anyways. And so we kind of gave them a ramp up to get projects in there, and at a certain point, if they don't come in here, they're going to pay the impact fees so we just kind of gave a window to say, hey, if you can get this thing ramped up, because it's better for everyone if we have projects early on that get built and start getting assessed and paying the taxes, then the minimum taxpayer agreement doesn't matter and all the other fun stuff. So the incentive, if you will, was to give them a window to better negotiate with tenants to get in there. And it was a case where this project started before we had impact fees, and they just hit the window where they came in. So I think it was Patch that recommended the 2-year and said, hey, if they're not done by 2 years, then so be it.
And then the portion on Mount Comfort is,
Yeah, and it's only those back
Yeah.
industrial, flex building.
yeah, so any
Portions.
buildings that would be along
Yeah, I don't know if I
that
have
six
the,
hundred, right, would be, they have to pay the road impact fee.
yeah, so any of the
So it's really
commercial
just
area.
The flex building behind, and we have the one that's already been submitted, and then there'll be another one following up here in the next 3 months or so.
Let me see if I have.
So they would beat the clock, but it was, if Tim talked to us about it, well, what are you comfortable with? We said, well, if we can't get it done in 2 years, then
Yeah.
beyond that, we'll
Okay.
pay.
Okay.
So it's just this area,
Yeah,
and
it's
frankly,
just-
half that area is already going to be submitted and under construction. So anything up here pays the impact fees as they would, assuming that they don't file prior to, I think July is when our road impact fee gets implemented. So we're in the waiting, there's a 6-month waiting period.
So it's about 20 acres back there?
Say that again.
Is that about 20 acres between those 2 lots?
think it is,
I don't think it's that much.
I'm seeing 14.61 on B and 5.70 on C.
yeah,
That's me.
Yeah.
Is that are they two? Is there more than one project
so
there?
there's, on the 5.71, they've already submitted.
Okay.
Yeah, that,
And that'll be,
Is that a build to suit?
yeah.
Okay.
And then just south of that, that block right, not that entire block, but if you drew a line down on that western line of the one to the north,
Mm-hmm.
that'll be another lot.
Oh, really?
So those will both be coming out of the ground here, hopefully by the end of the year.
Okay.
The one to the north will start, they want to start in
a little
June.
too fast.
Yeah, but that'll start right away, and then probably the fall to the late fall would be the one to the south.
Okay.
And then there's an opportunity to do 2, maybe 3 buildings over there, depending on the size.
So that
So those will be smaller.
yeah, the depth of that won't create a problem for you.
Say that again.
The depth of that won't create a
No,
problem.
they'll orient differently.
Okay.
They'll orient north and south. And they'll be the smaller, probably the 30 to 40,000 square foot buildings.
Which is what we were looking for.
And will those enter off of the driveway to the north?
Yes, but there'll be another drive that will actually connect kind of just north of where the pond is, and then go up the western edge of the 2 lots that are happening. So there'll be a
Okay.
private drive there that will give them the access to the south, and then they'll be able to get to the north public right away.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So on the exhibits, they're not all in here though. What are we missing an exhibit? D.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, we have this, I just don't have it baked into the agreement because they come in different documents from different folks, and so we'll populate the exhibits before the agreement's, finally executed in final form. But that, we have that report from Bondry. I think I printed that off. Well, I've got it in my file over there, but that'll come from the Bondry report, and then the description of the project. We'll get a formal description from the patch team and drop it in there.
Is the description related to the value of the improvements though?
It's going to be a generic description of kind of industrial flex warehouses, and we already have in the agreement, there's a minimum investment threshold of $30 million. We don't really get, and you may have seen this, typically with these descriptions, it's sort of a less is more type of approach. Sometimes when you get too fine detailed on them, you can kind of hem yourself in, and on both sides of the table.
Mhm.
So we try to keep it pretty open and flexible.
Any other questions?
I'm asking them all.
You are.
Okay. Well, I move that we approve the economic development agreement as presented.
Resolution.
Oh,
There's
sorry.
actual resolution to
The
it.
resolution.
050625.
My bad. Sorry, I didn't have that one open. It was open on that other iPad.
It's resolution
050625.
050625.
All right. I move that we approve resolution number 050625 related to patch development.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution passes.
Thank you.
Public hearing. The public notice verification for patch infrastructure.
So, as part of the BOT process, we have to have a public hearing. So we have published that. You just need to open the public hearing, ask if there's any public comment, and then close the public hearing.
Do I have any
Thank
public
you.
comments for the public notice
Keep that.
verification?
Okay.
We have to open the
You
hearing
have to open
first.
it. You have to open it?
Yep.
Yeah, open the hearing.
Oh,
So
You can do it on your own.
yes, you
okay.
just have
I
to.
propose to open the hearing for the public notice verification for the BOT
So we have to document the time.
document.
I'll just mention for the record, we advertised it in the paper, we've got the proofs of publication, so we're all set in that regard.
Just a copy of the
Surprised that statute hasn't been changed.
They
It
try.
reads the pe-
There's
reads
a
the
lot of
paper.
pushback from the newspaper lobby.
Oh, I see. It keeps them alive, eh?
That's who it is.
They took some steps that you don't have to do everything anymore, and then they want to go to a centralized website for it, but then they just can't quite get there.
Any
Leave it
comment?
at that.
Do we have any comments from the public? Okay, nope.
Close.
All right, we will close the public hearing on the BOT.
Perfect.
Let's see, resolution 050625A.
Just a note to you, we got some comments back from their attorney, and Dennis is happy to share it. So the updated version is different than the one I sent on the link Friday by just a little bit, really nothing major.
Yeah.
But I wanted to note it.
Tim, I'll kind of jump in now if that's a good time. So we just had the public hearing on this, and I want to step back a little bit on this as a refresher. We were here last month talking about how we're going to issue bonds. We have to do a procurement process because this is a public works project, so we chose the BOT statute to do that.
Mm-hmm.
We advertised a notice. We had the BOT committee. Patch team was the only team to respond. That was reviewed by the committee, agreed with their proposal, which dovetails the infrastructure that you've seen. So this is the form of agreement that we have prepared. As Tim mentioned, it's been reviewed by Patch's counsel. I've got their comments back. There was nothing in their comments that really gave me any pause concern. It basically says they're going to do a guaranteed max price of $4.5 million to deliver the infrastructure. And they will, run all the plans and specs by the town. And then when it's completed, they'll deliver the project. It'll get deeded over to the town. And we have some exhibits on this one that are we'll fill them in standard insurance covenants and things like that we'll build into the exhibits before this is finalized. And when we go and issue the bonds, just for your information, we'll do a transcript that will include final sets of all of these documents fully executed in final form that everyone will get.
And as part of that process, the RFPQ committee met, which you guys approved at a previous meeting.
Mm-hmm.
There was one submittal, so there wasn't a lot to talk about. But we did all sign off on recommending Patch to do the work.
Yeah. And I guess the final thing I'll mention to this, you all know the police station project.
Mm-hmm.
That was a BOT project, and the form of agreement we're using here is nearly identical to that agreement, and I think that project's gone very well.
Their attorney drafted that BOT agreement for us at the time.
Yeah.
So.
This isn't the type of infrastructure work where we would need a CM, right?
No.
We hire Veritas, or we don't need somebody like that, do we?
No, we'll do typical infrastructure inspections through
the
Mike and
town.
Mark and everybody.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm not worried about. I'd be more worried about them on a building project. We're pretty used to doing infrastructure inspection. So
Yeah.
now, like, we do have one on the roundabout that's going in at 6 and 6.
Mm-hmm.
We have an inspector on that one. I can't remember who it is, but so we have done it. But in this particular case, it's mainly straight streets. We do those in subdivisions all the time.
Well, and yeah, you're not kind of messing with flow of traffic.
Yeah, and
things
we're
like
off
that.
the main corridor, and we're really not. This is kind of like a subdivision street. It's a little heftier, but I'm not worried about this particular infrastructure.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
I move to approve resolution 050625A.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Resolution 050625A passes. On to bond refinancing memo.
So this was brought to us late today, and then actually Oscar just told me he didn't really need to be on here, but I'm gonna make him talk about it anyways.
Yeah, this is for Tim and the administration, but for informational purposes, I think it's good since I believe that Councilman Brewer brought this up last time, what was the plan of finance? So these are moving targets, so we have to pick a time period to decide this. As I was sitting here earlier, if you guys saw me look at my phone, it just happened to look at the Indiana Bond Bank released their numbers just literally in the last couple hours. So just like that, these are outdated, and I compared them to MMD today from that period, and they have also shifted, but they shifted in the same manner. So I created a small like a decision table here at the front for Tim to recommend something to you. And the interest rate as of April 29, when we ran these numbers, again, they will shift a date of sale and they could deviate. But the Indiana Bond Bank was the cheapest option by about 0.25%. Region sends out their indicative rates, which go out about 10 years. And they were between that 4.25. So the next best rate, if you were to go to the bank, it's about 0.25 point. The numbers that we provided to the city in the memo that you guys saw last month or before you, we were looking at a 5% coupon. So any savings from that 5%, these gentlemen are still signing an MTA, and that savings obviously comes back to the RDC. So any savings is obviously a decision point for Tim to, obviously you guys pay your tax bill and he gets to spend it on $10,000 report bills that he will begrudgingly do, and we will give a credit. We'll work with him.
Well, at least once.
Well, no, we're okay giving a credit. I mean, I'm not, we're a small company, so I digress. And the last one would be your typical capital markets deal, which we would go before the rating agency, in this case, Standard & Poor's. They would look at your credit rating, and then we would go to the public markets with an underwriter. And because of the uncertainty at the national level, the public markets actually typically are, in most circumstances, they're always the cheapest option. But in today's uncertainty, they actually happen to be the most expensive. And again, that could shift overnight. But so those are the rates that you're looking at, between a 4.25, and then 4.75 and 5, which is at par with what we indicated. The last piece on here on that table, and there's a lot more to the memo that goes into the math and everything else, is how soon you would need the money. If you were to take the option of the bond bank, there is a process. We would have to apply a month prior to being at their board meeting. So that would take place in June. And then their board meeting would meet on July 3rd, and we would be able to close. Actually, no, the board meets in June, and then they would be issuing bonds and closing on July 3rd. So depending on how fast Patch would need the funding, which, I think what you said was yesterday. So invoices would have to be held, and they would be wired on July 3rd if that option was to be taken. If the Patch team couldn't hold invoices that long and needed it sooner, then we would shift to probably a bank placement option with Regions in another bank, or two completely different banks, and that would be at 4.25. And we could probably get that done from the time Mr. Grob says go. It takes us between 30 to 45 days to draft an agreement and close on that, which would save you, about 30 days or so, but you would also give up about 0.25 point on that. So it's something that we can all huddle after this, and any input from the board would be, or for the commission, would be helpful to Tim to decide. But again, this was for informational purposes only, for Tim to make a decision. But since he has it, I'm here, might as well brief you guys on this today.
I don't think more information's a bad thing.
No, it is not what we typically see. Again, it usually looks backwards from this, but
Is there any
today.
concern the bond bank wouldn't approve this project? Are they
No,
getting
no, no,
pickier
no,
on the
that- it-
projects, or they?
It's a, yeah, this is exactly what they created the program for, and both you and I happen to know the executive director, and we could easily bring it back to the next meeting and make sure he approves it. But, no, I kid. No, he's, I mean, all joking aside, no, this is exactly what they look forward to financing, so I wouldn't foresee any issues with this financing.
We just need to work through.
Honestly, you're talking about a half month, and, you know, we're in May, and we haven't reviewed any of the public infrastructure yet through the public process. You're probably not even mobilizing till end of June.
Well, we have the mass grading, so we were
Masquerading,
trying to start June 1. So
And there-
to make sure we get everything in by the end of the year. That's a
Mhm.
big part of it, and also getting it ready for the other
Hey,
companies.
Not for the public consumption, but, you know, if there's a reimbursement resolution and something had to be worked out, we could
Yeah.
work through that. But, something to consider. But, any questions on the three options, and any advice to Mr. Gropp would be probably,
Don't spend the extra money if you can't hit the timeline, is what I would say. You know, if it literally is 2 weeks and it's gonna be that anyways, I would go for the lower rate, personally. But you don't want, you know, holding it up 2 weeks, you gotta decide how detrimental that is.
yeah, and, you know, again, MMD, everything's shifted down about a quarter point from what I could see, so these are actually gonna be slightly better to your
Better
favor
than this.
if, you know, again, it could shift the other way again, but it's moving in the right direction for you.
Really,
Either option.
the biggest thing, if we go the bond bank, is we gotta get that application in.
By June, yeah. And we have time. I mean, I would say, I would like a decision within the next 2 weeks so that we can hit the June meeting. We probably need about
Well, we'll
3 to
still
5
have
days.
an approval process next week, so I can't do anything until the
Yeah.
council signs off on it.
Mhm.
I guess I'd say, Tim, if you're thinking about like leaning towards the bond bank and the lower rate, Oscar brought up a great point about the reimbursement resolution. I mean, this is a public work project, really. We'll have our agreement with Patch. So if you wanted to use redevelopment commission funds or some other funds to sort of float that first mass grading payment until July 3rd.
It would just be reimbursed to the
and then just
commission
reimburse yourself in
2 weeks
the-
later.
Depends what it is. We don't have a lot of
I guess
funds.
that's-
Silt fence? Just silt
That's
fence,
our
right?
adorable.
We're just offering solutions.
If you don't have any, if it gets pushed back and it's July, then in July our draw will be, a lot of it is the reimbursement for the engineering. That we've spent significant dollars in engineering to get to where we are.
That you've already spent, you're just waiting to get reimbursed, right? I mean,
So we can work through that. I mean, if it's 2 weeks, that's fine. We just need to make sure we have the approvals done next week, and that's the part. And we can work through maybe our ability to get started on this project. If the DOT is awarded, et cetera, plans are approved, signed, sealed, delivered, then we can still start in June and work through any
to
dollars and cents.
to Dale's point, I would typically go with the best rate. My only caveat of ones I don't love the capital markets because it's a little extra work with all the rating and everything, and it takes a little bit of time. And
D-
frankly, the rating agencies are not always fun. We're okay. We haven't done a rating in a while. We probably should, to be honest. But
Could be done for the police station, but I will say that I'm looking at the memo, and your exact deadline to have the application in is May 21st. So ideally, we want to get started sooner than later to be able to hit that July 3rd. So the way that it would work, if this is the route you choose to go, is the application is due May 21st. Then we would attend, and you don't have to attend, you're welcome to, but we would
I did-
attend
I
the
did for
Indiana
the
Bond
last
Bank
one.
meeting on June 11. Dennis and I would both be there, and again, you're welcome to come, and
I'd
they
like
don't
to see
ask.
if I can break Jacob in front of everyone.
It,
Just make
it, it would be
laugh.
fun. It would be fun to have you there, but and then the closing and funds distribution would be July 3rd, and at that point, if you were to do if any funds were to come from the town, they would be reimbursed on that day via wire, and or if funds were to be dispersed, we would just need that information,
We typ-
and they'd be wired at
we
closing, so.
typically wire it at closing to the developer. We typically don't reimburse from the town.
Right, but if they had invoices ready to go, they-
But we have no problem with the closing and there's immediate wire to reimburse.
yeah, no, we would work that through the trustee, so
Very common.
the money goes to the trustee has the, so we would coordinate all of that on their behalf, is what I'm saying,
Yeah.
to be paid on that day with the trustee.
Well, you guys are getting a little behind the curtain discussions.
Yeah, and again, this
We
is
don't
why
wanna
this is
take
a
more of
memo
your time
for
than we
Tim,
need
but,
to,
but I'm happy to have this publicly in the public and see that you guys are doing what's best for the town. And, you know, 0.25% on $5 million is not insignificant.
Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Right,
any other
thank you.
questions?
Thanks, Oscar. Appreciate that.
All right. Do I have to do anything else? It's just info, okay. The Town council liaison report, do you have any?
Not here this evening. It was a somewhat shorter council meeting last time because it was spring break for myself and our attorney. So we tried to push a lot of items. So if you were ever going to attend a public meeting, I would not attend the May council meeting because it's going to be a marathon.
Okay.
We have a lot. We just uploaded Ordinance H. So you start at
Oh, wow.
nothing all
From
the way.
H?
So it's going to be a hefty council agenda. So,
Okay,
Wow.
on to public comment. Okay, and our next meeting will be June 3rd, 2025.
I may have a conflict, I'm not sure.
who's not going to be here?
Is there
Potentially
anyone
me.
who's
I
not
thought I
going to
heard
be
a
here
Meeting in
June 3rd?
Illinois.
Just you?
I think it's just me.
Just make sure before you leave you sign the resolutions.
All
We
right.
do.
Alrighty, we're done.
I move to adjourn.